This episode is brought to you by Spring of Life. Giving my best each day is a demanding task that requires good health, and I try to stay on top of it as much as possible, but some days I could just use something extra. And so I've been taking Daily Energy from Spring of Life. Daily Energy is one of the most complete nutritional supplements I've seen. It has over 70 natural ingredients that target 11 key areas of health, and it's much more than just a greens product or a health drink. We've worked out a deal with Daily Energy so that listeners like yourself can get 30% off right now. Go to dailyenergy.com/smart for this special offer. Again, that's dailyenergy.com/smart and save 30% on Daily Energy. It's the simplest life hack you can do for your health this year.
A podcast where we talk to smart people, but not necessarily done by smart people.
That is an awesome question.
This one goes down probably on one of my top 5.
Hey, I like nutrition. I like to eat food.
This is the coolest thing ever. We're going to do this forever.
I wish I paid more attention in that class.
You know, I'm going to be honest, I don't understand that. As a man, I don't get it.
Welcome to smartpeoplepodcast.com.
Hello and welcome to Smart People Podcast 2017. Happy New Year. Hope it was fun, safe, fun, obviously. It's going to be a great new year. Do you feel that one? Do you feel it in your bones? Because you need to. This is the time. If you don't feel it now, well, then what are you setting yourself up for? And perhaps that is why this is such an amazing episode for this time of year. If you want to make change in your life, if you want to move things in the right direction, it starts with, we all know this, the most powerful tool we own, not your computers, your brain. How do we change that? Well, it has to do with mindset, right? And look, I'm the first to admit, I study this stuff, I teach this stuff, I coach on this, and I have setbacks. Everybody has setbacks. Everybody has their issues. But if we can keep learning, practicing, trying things, that's how we get better. And I'm going to quote Tony Robbins here, somebody that I truly admire and love. And my wife, well, she's hilarious. That's why I love her. Yin to my yang. She's like, how can you listen to that guy? But anyways, I love Tony Robbins. He says people overestimate what they can do in a day, but underestimate what they can do in a decade. And I'd like to change that to underestimate what they can do in a year, because it's the beginning of the year. So, to start us off in the right direction, we are talking mindset. We're talking about turning losses into wins or failures into lessons, if you will, depending on how you want to look at it. This week on the show, we have Sam Weinman. And Sam is the author of the brand new book, came out December 20th, Win at Losing, How Our Biggest Setbacks Can Lead to Our Greatest Gains. But that's not all we cover in this episode. It's kind of a two-parter, much like many of our episodes are. The first half, or just less than half, we talk about Sam's background. So he has covered sports. He's been a sports writer for a lot of his life, and he is now and has been the Golf Digest digital editor. So although we use the guise of golf, something I'm extremely passionate about, in the beginning part of this interview, what we're talking about is, first of all, what's it like to write a book, especially your first book, even though you've been a writer your whole life? And then what's it like to run one of the most popular sports websites on the planet? We talk about things like creating those headlines that hook people, and is that cheesy or cheating or pandering or whatever? We talk about what content creation is like now and where it may be going. And then we transition into his book. And as you can tell by the title, Win at Losing, it's really about bouncing back from failure. You know, in life, we all experience different types of loss. And I think it's human nature. The first place we want to go is, first of all, I don't like that feeling. And second of all, what did I do to lose? And that's fair. That's necessary, in my opinion. But Sam has gone out. He's talked to some of the best losers in the world. And by losers, you know, oftentimes it's people like Greg Norman, okay? Perhaps one of the best golfers of all time, who blew a lead on Sunday in the Masters and never won one of the biggest tournaments there is in golf. Or Michael Dukakis, who came so close to the presidency and lost. Or small business owners, Olympic athletes, all of these people to see, you know, first of all, how real is that feeling of loss? Of course it's real. It doesn't just mean that Olympic athletes don't feel it. how can you learn from it? And even more so, we're not saying that loss is good. Personally, for me, that's a pet peeve when people say, yeah, no, I like failing. I don't like it, but there can be a silver lining. And a lot of that comes down to how you look at it. So we're going to get into just a great episode to kick off the year here with Sam and his book, Win at Losing. Again, we are at smartpeoplepodcast.com. We would love for you to sign up for our newsletter. Go to smartpeoplepodcast.com, bottom right-hand corner. We send you snippets from episodes, best things we've heard, upcoming events. And at first, you'll get kind of a series of introductory emails, but after that, it's maybe monthly at best, so we're not clogging your inbox. smartpeoplepodcast.com. That's us. Reach out. Hope to hear from you. And here it is, our episode with Sam Weinman. Enjoy. Well, Sam, I know your book drops today, so thanks for taking time out of what I can imagine is an insane schedule to join us on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's a fun kind of insane.
Yeah, I can imagine. And speaking of which, this is your first book, and we mentioned it in the intro, but the book is Win at Losing, How Our Biggest Setbacks Can Lead to Our Greatest Gains. And I just want to learn a little bit about, from kind of a newcomer to the book writing industry, and then writing kind of a book that's, it's getting out there. You got a lot of great coverage on it and things like that. What's it like?
It's again, not having a frame of reference, it's been fun. I mean, obviously, book publishing, I guess you could break it into three phases. One is the proposal, trying to sell a book phase, which was fun but nerve-wracking because I'm a complete unknown entity, or a mostly unknown entity. Then there's the kind of quiet writing and reporting phase, which was fun, in the sense that I knew I sold the book, I had a contract, I talked to all kinds of interesting people, I saw ideas come together. Obviously, taxing from a professional standpoint because I have a day job and I have a family, and I had to kind of balance all those things. But I enjoyed it. It was fun. And then there's this third phase, which is the promotion and publicity, which is fun. It's interesting. Like, it's a lot of chest beating, which I don't think I want to be good at, because I just feel like it's counterintuitive, especially since so much of my book is about the importance of humility. And here I am, shouting from the rooftops how great this book is. So it's an interesting dynamic, but all three have been fun and really educational.
Yeah. Well, regarding the chest beating, I'll be honest with you here. We've interviewed now 250 plus, most of them authors, and I find that most actually, the majority, I won't say, the mass majority, but they don't, they're not saying, oh, I'm the best, this is the best. They just are passionate about their topic, and it comes across,
Sure.
And so I think if that's your baseline, you'll be good.
No, I'm going to say I'm the best. I'm the best. No, yes.
Goes right in line with your book. So one of the things you mentioned there, maybe this is personal to me, but I know a lot of my friends my age deal with this as well. So you said, you have a day job, which is you are the Golf Digest digital editor, which we're going to talk about. You have a family, which I'm aware of because that's kind of the purpose for the book, was your boys. So you have two boys?
Correct.
Okay, two boys. When do you find time to write or do anything? Because I have a young son, and he's 19 months old. We hope to have another. And I'm already finding it takes my drive to do a lot of other things away, because I'm like, I just want to hang out with him.
Yeah, well, I certainly experienced that as well, and still experience it to some extent. I mean, first of all, when my boys were young, I kind of put my own personal writing aside. It just wasn't realistic. They are both from my heart and soul was in being a dad and being there for them and my wife. And not that I'm not now, but there's a now they're 11 and 8, and they certainly I certainly want to be with them a lot, but they also are becoming more and more independent. So some opportunities arise. So how did I do it? I have a stack of dishes that, I don't do. My lawn is a mess. All those things, you make sacrifices in your life. And, sacrifice sounds really dramatic. I mean, but I just found time. I woke up early in the morning. I worked on weekends. I went to the library for a couple hours on weekends. I worked at night. I worked on the train on the way to work. My wife makes a good point about me. She's like, you do the things that you really like to do, and you don't do the things you don't want to do. Hence the dishes in the sink. When I'm passionate about something, I find a way to do it, and I think that's true for everyone.
That's a great point. And you are a writer by trade. I mean, that's what you've done your entire adult life. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. For the most part, I mean, I'm now technically an editor, but
right.
certainly part of being an editor is, I mean, I'm a writer first and foremost a writer, but I'm also an editor and a manager and a bureaucrat.
Yeah. And so I guess, because I'm thinking about it, and I know a lot of listeners want to write books, I want to write books, etc.
Right.
But when you are a writer by trade, I would imagine it's easier to kind of get into that mode. Like, okay, I'm on a train, I have 30 minutes, I can write. Well, because you practice so many times. But for people who are trying, it's like, oh, just that 30 minutes would take my brain to like get used to the blank page.
I suppose. I mean, it's, and the same thing could be said for me looking at a spreadsheet of numbers. I am going to be utterly clueless, and people, I have friends who work in finance who it's no big deal. So everyone has things they're, inherently they are drawn to or find quote unquote easier. I do make a point that like, you can find a way to become proficient in anything if you really put in the time and energy. It's all about effort. But yes, I guess I'm reluctant to say it comes easy to me because I don't think it's ever easy. But I do feel I enjoy it, and so I'm motivated to write in ways that maybe people aren't.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about what you do as your day job, because I find it fascinating. So, first of all, you covered sports in before being an editor, right?
Correct.
How does one become a sports writer? Because that sounds like, aside from being the athlete, one of the coolest jobs on the planet.
Right. So my background out of college was writing. Like I wanted to do creative writing, wanted to write novels and fiction, but I also I had college loans, and I wanted to not live with my parents for a long time. So I had to get a real job. Being a novelist or a short story writer is a very noble job, but it doesn't really pay right off the bat. And so the next best thing for me in becoming a novelist was working in journalism and I love sports. So I was fortunate to sort of get a couple of freelance gigs at various newspapers, and that turned into a full-time job. And I loved it. I love writing about sports. I love, covering hockey and golf, which were my two main things. Then I got to a point in my career that, you have an opportunity to go to Golf Digest is you can't really go to a better place. And for me, I also recognize that, the way the world is these days, the opportunities for just 100% writers on staff at places are dwindling. Most places want people who can do a little bit of everything, and writing is one of those things. And I recognize that. And I wanted to work at Golf Digest, and an opportunity arose there. And opportunity arose to work on the digital side, which I suppose I was smart enough to recognize was the future of publishing. And so I jumped at it, and I was really glad that I did.
So as a digital editor, does everything that goes out on golfdigest.com have to go through you?
That's a great question. Let's put it this way. Everything that goes out through Golf Digest on digital is my fault if it doesn't work out. I mean, I'm joking, but we have a great, very big, a growing staff that includes all of our sort of golfdigest.com content, and then we have tons of social media and tons of video now. And so as the digital editor, that's all under my purview. I don't want to attach self-importance. There's a lot of people who have important jobs that see this stuff through, but that's all part of it as well. And so yes, my job is planning the daily content of the site and what we're putting out on a daily basis, and how we want to cover things and the tone that we want to cover things. But there's the digital world is not governed by the same sort of checks and balances that the print side is. When a print story, because I work on the print side as well at Golf Digest, when a print story is written, it's sent in, it's edited, it's fact checked, it's designed, it's sent back out on galley for literally 15 people to read. It's laid out on a page. All these things go through. We move at such a quick pace at Golf Digest, and so we allow ourselves the opportunity to mess up. And we just, the good news is that we have people who get it, know that what our standards are, and we move at a quick, but I'd like to think a very responsible pace as well.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I mentioned this prior to us recording, but I'm a diehard golfer. And by diehard, I mean, I left finance. I had a cushy finance job. I took some time off, said, what do I really want to do? And it was golf. And so I took a $9 an hour job at a golf course working towards a club pro.
Wow.
Yeah. And then a year into that was like, this is terrible. I'll keep it as a hobby.
Sure.
But anyways, so, it's got a special place in my heart. And what I'm wondering is, how do you go about, like, what is the internal strategy for Golf Digest Digital, .com to, what's the goal? Is it connecting with the avid golfer? Is it providing entertainment? Is it mostly providing skills and things like that? Or, what do you consider your job to be means you're succeeding, I guess, is what I'm asking.
That's a great question. So, and it's something we think about all the time. So, the way we look at it is that there are basically two pools of people. There is the diehard golfer, the converted, the people who love golf, who are in golf, who know Golf Digest, who want to improve at their game. And then, so those are people we definitely want to serve, and we want to provide, news about the game. We want to provide instruction on how to be better. We want equipment reviews are a big part of it. Reviews of golf courses, all those things that golfers know and value. And that's a big part of Golf Digest. The second part, though, is people who golf is kind of on their radar and they may like golf, and we want to engage those people as well. We want to prove to them that golf is fun and has a lighthearted side, and so there's an element of entertaining those people. I mean, to use a kind of internal metaphor, we call it a funnel. Like the wide part of the funnel is all these people who are sort of intrigued by golf and who are would be interested in a post about Tiger Woods or Ricky Fowler partying with Cindy Crawford, which actually happened last week.
Oh, wow.
Those are people who, we recognize that there's a certain pop culture element of golf that we want to tap into. So those people, but eventually we want people to engage those people so that they are interested in actual golf and and playing the game and hopefully, seeing why Golf Digest, the kind of core coverage areas of Golf Digest have real value to them. And so it's kind of like we try to get them in the door and then hopefully keep them there.
Right. Well, what's the pressure like? I mean, here's the thing. As you mentioned, the landscape has changed. Writing has changed, especially on websites. It's, we got to be the first. We have to get as many people as possible and all of that, and so I know, at least to me, it sounds like a fairly glamorous job. I get to write about and see all this stuff with golf and one of the largest, most well-known kind of digital golf providers. But I mean, how stressful is it that you're going every day? You have to be thinking, or I'm sure from on high, it's how many people read this one article, this one tweet, all that stuff.
That's a really good question, Chris. I mean, the best way to look at it is that 20 years ago, when you wrote something for Golf Digest, obviously there was pressure to writing for Golf Digest because there were standards and we had an audience and we wanted to make sure that audience, we were serving that audience. But just by the nature of it being in Golf Digest, people were going to read it. You know what I mean? If we made the decision to put it in the magazine, people were going to read it because we have this very engaged audience, and that was the most important sort of hurdle to get through. Well, now when you push out all this digital content, you're competing for so many eyeballs, and there's just because it's written by Golf Digest doesn't mean anything. I mean, obviously it means a little bit. I don't mean to say that, but you have to work hard to earn people's attention, and so there is, I guess, stress or pressure to make sure that headlines are working as hard as they can, stories are working as hard as they can. What is the story? We have this internal debate all the time about. I want to write this story, and we have to say, well, what's the hook? What's the angle here? And the guy says, well, I just kind of want to write about this. That's not enough. We have great writers, people who are great, and there are some people who people just are attracted to because they know the byline. But those days are fewer and farther in between. Now it's more about what is the sort of use a business jingo. What is the value proposition of that story.
And now a quick word from one of this week's sponsors. I'm really excited to bring this week's sponsor into the fold. This week we have Blue Apron. Blue Apron is fantastic. Simply put, Blue Apron makes cooking fun and easy, and they provide you with all the ingredients you need to make a delicious meal in exactly the right proportions. Not only are they bringing you delicious food, but they have such a positive impact on the community. The seafood is sourced sustainably under standards developed in partnership with the Montero Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch. Their beef is raised humanely, chickens are free range, and the pork is raised naturally. Blue Apron can be delivered to 99% of the continental US and 99.5% of food deserts. Because Blue Apron ships the exact amount of each ingredient required for a recipe, they are reducing food waste. It's had such a positive impact on my household. My girlfriend and I cook together, and Blue Apron helps facilitate cooking together, which builds strong family bonds. Research shows that Blue Apron families cook nearly 3 times more often. All right, let's get to the good stuff. Here are some of the meals available in January. Seared pork chops with farro and cranberry chutney, spaghetti squash and marinara with mushrooms and garlic knots, and spicy shrimp and Korean rice cakes with cabbage and furikake. All right, so here's what you have to do. Check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/smartpeople. You'll love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, so don't wait. That's blueapron.com/smartpeople. Blue Apron, a better way to cook. And now back to the episode.
Well, and as the digital editor, I mean, this is such a great conversation because I've thought about this so many times. I mean, given that you've written your whole life, you're probably a bit of a purist, and you now know the things you have to do to get eyeballs on. One of them being like these titles, right? The titles, I mean, they're ridiculous sometimes because I've done some writing and I've done a lot of research on it. And you could just, instead of going, what do I want to tell people? It's like, how do I hook them instantly
completely.
and all that? Do you ever feel like, this is taking, not only this is taking some of the fun out of it and some of the real grit out of it, but also you're pandering at all?
Yes. And so, look, that's a part of the deal, and I 100% get it. You feel like you're lowering your standards in some ways. And the way I justify it in my mind is that in order to do the things that are really of quality and that we really value as journalists and as writers and as golf people, you do the things that are just to get audience. And so, and I always say that we would not be doing our job if we wrote all these sort of provocative or salacious stories, because that's just, that's everywhere on the internet, right? People can read those type of stories everywhere. So that would be a real miss on our part. However, the other side of it is if we wrote these highly principled, really deeply reported journalistic stories that took a long time to write, and we didn't have, we weren't making sure that people were seeing them, we would be writing to a fraction of the audience that we have. And so you justify it by making sure people are aware of the work you're doing by just getting them in the door. And then when you get them in the door, you can show them that there's some real depth to what we do, which is true.
Right. And the reason it's a great conversation to have with someone like yourself, having read Golf Digest and a million different golf things for years, is like I could go back probably through Golf Digest, and I don't know if you can search this way, but I mean, you've probably titled an article, the #1 cure for a slice. You've probably titled
never written about that,
literally probably 3,000 times, right? And I understand it, because if a person happens to be there that day, everybody slices if you're a righty, right? So how do you feel about that? Is it just kind of like that idea of, well, people want to read that. So although we wrote about it 3 months ago, they might not have seen it 3 months ago.
So that's a big part of it. So a way we justify it in our minds, and it's totally true, is that, as the editors who live with this stuff every day, we're aware of the repetition in some of these stories.
Right.
But the average reader is not. To the average reader, that day, they want to read about a slice cure. They want a story that's going to speak to them. And they're not keeping track to the same extent that we are. Of course, it doesn't say that we don't want to be original and that we don't force ourselves to come up with innovative approaches to stories, because of course we do. But you can't be paralyzed by that thought, because um, people aren't keeping track to the same extent that we are.
Sure. No, that's totally fair. I think it's one of my downfalls is seeing the total, pure, logical side of everything, where you have to look at, I mean, you have to look at kind of the real world
Sure.
and realize even I operate like that. You
Right.
know, I'll play a round of golf and shoot, 5 strokes above my handicap because I was hitting a duck hook, and then I'll go on to Golf Now and just want the most recent thing on hooks. You know what I
Right.
mean? Anyways, it's a fascinating conversation. I also want to ask you about the future of kind of content creation, perhaps digitally. I mean, what do you see given it's the growth curve on the amount of information is so insane? It can be depressing. It can be for people who want to put things out there. It can seem useless. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I wish I had all the answers. I would say the most important thing right now is to make sure that as a publisher you are providing something different and that is that has real value to it. That you have to if your focus is on quality and you are getting people there, then you have to make sure that you continue to serve them. So, for instance, I look at the New York Times or the New Yorker, like two brands that are, I feel, I mean, I don't have, I'm not privy to their bottom lines, but I feel like have really transitioned well to the digital age. And the thing they do is they have become nimbler. They're obviously a different operation than they were 20 years ago, but they've also maintained that their name, their brand has a certain level of quality that they stick to. So, going back to what I said before, at Golf Digest, we feel like the way to remain relevant is, first of all, having people look, find us. So, having as wide an audience as possible, but also making sure that we are delivering on quality and things that people aren't going to find somewhere else. So that, when there are a gajillion stories about how to cure your slice, people look at Golf Digest and think, okay, this is Golf Digest, though. It's coming with a certain level of quality and a certain expectation of credibility.
Right. It's definitely fair. Well, let's transition over to the reason we're all here, even though that was part of the reason I was here, to be honest. Brand new book, Win at Losing, How Our Biggest Setbacks Can Lead to Our Greatest Gains. Why don't you do us the honor of just kind of give us a brief explanation for those that don't know, set the book up for us.
Sure. The book is essentially about how losing is an important part of our lives and a good thing in our lives, and how we can derive a lot of benefits from moments of failure and losing. And for me, it started with a really small personal challenge of my two boys. We talked about my boys earlier. Both are very active in youth sports and competitive little athletes, and both struggled with losing and couldn't see any upside in losing. So the book starts with this tennis match my son was playing, and it was he was 10 at the time, and he lost in the semifinals of this tournament and had a complete meltdown and ran into the parking lot and threw his racket and swore off tennis forever. And it sort of crystallized a couple things. One is that he's a miniature version of me. And second of all, that he needs to learn how to lose, that he needs to see that losing can be a really good thing, and that he needs to understand that, first of all, you can't throw up your hands in frustration when things don't go your way, but also you need to recognize that there's a lot of good that can come out of that experience. And so, like I said, it started as a small challenge, and I could have kept it there and written a small book about teaching my kids how to lose, but I ultimately wanted to expand the scope and write about losing on a broader scale and talk to people who have endured, profound losses in various walks of life. So sports was certainly a part of it. So there's, Greg Norman losing the Masters. I talked to him, but there's also Michael Dukakis losing the presidency in 1988 and how he dealt with it, and talking to people who started businesses that, went up in flames and how that ended up being a positive experience. So I tried to look at it from a variety of different angles and support it all with not only the voices of the people who experienced it, but also, experts, people who, know this topic at a pretty deep level. And who can kind of help us understand why losing can be a good thing and why and how we can process it in a constructive way.
Yeah, that's a fantastic explanation of it. But now I'm going to ask you a question that, couldn't have prepared for. It's not a stump question, but take your time because I really want you to, this is helping the information you have gathered, right? Mm-hmm. So one of them is, in terms of sports, I think it's fairly obvious in that, having played sports for a while, if you lose, it stinks, but it highlights the things you could get better at and all of that. So you just go back to the table, you work on that thing, hopefully you win. Okay. And you can give us the other reasons, but I just want to keep that one on the table. But for something that is more a soft skill almost, or take, Dukakis or anything you saw on that, where the reason you lose is less hands-on, like less obvious. And then you go back and you say, I lost because of who I am. And so I equate it to one time, kind of a devastating, I didn't get hired for a job. Right. And, I was like, that's about who I am. Right. I mean, and no matter any rationalization I put behind it, assuming I was prepared and everything, which I was to my best of my ability, how does that even help? Or how do you not, what did you find people say, here's how you don't go into a spiral of self-loathing?
Sure. Well, first of all, I would disagree with the premise that, you fail because of who you are, like people, you were rejected and it's a reflection of your self-worth. Like there's a whole portion, and Dukakis is a perfect example. There's a whole portion of the book that talks about growth and fixed mindsets. Are you familiar with that phrase?
Oh, yeah. From Carol Dweck, yeah.
Of course. So Carol Dweck was, I talked to her for the book, and I quote her quite a lot in the book. And, her whole argument is that we should never look at failures as a definition of us, or nor should we look at our successes as a definition of us. If I win at something, it doesn't mean I'm a better person or I'm better. It just means I was better that day, and that and if I lose, it means I wasn't as good that day, and I can always get better. And so, Dukakis, for an example, yes, he lost probably because people ultimately decided that George Bush was the better option for president. But there were things about Michael Dukakis that he could improve upon. Maybe, he chose not to run again for president. And, so it's not always linear. It's not like he can just apply those lessons the next day. But ultimately, there are things as a person that he can improve upon that may have been deficiencies. So when you look at Hillary Clinton, for example, who just lost an election, who in many ways was rejected by people because of, quote unquote, who she was. Well, that was the reason why she lost the 2016 presidency, but it doesn't mean that Hillary Clinton can't address those shortcomings or flaws that people see to become a public servant or a valuable contributor to society in some way. And she can, all the things that were turnoffs about her are things that she can address. So I would argue that it's never a reflection of you. It's a reflection of you that day or what you brought to the table that day.
Do you see in all the people you've interviewed, do you see like their ability to work through that given they have a stronger mindset? Or, you know what I mean? Because sometimes, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, right? We all fail. And I'd imagine everyone or most people dwell on that a little bit. And it takes a hit against who they are. And so I'm wondering, in your conversations, did people say, yes, like I'm human, that happened, and then I made this conscious decision or I took these steps?
Yeah, no. I mean, very few people, I think, wake up and say, okay, this happened to me. I'm going to learn from it and I'm going to grow from this experience. It's just not realistic. I mean, I think it's a much longer process. So it's not the next hour or the next day. I think over a period of time, though, they are sort of faced with this new reality and they have to find a way to navigate it. And so ultimately that shows their resilience and their ability to, their ability to have the right mindset. But as Dweck herself says, everyone has a little bit of fixed mindset and a little bit of growth mindset in them. And so when we lose, our first instinct is to have that fixed mindset, like I'm the worst, I suck, all those sort of, all that negative self-talk, that's inevitable. What eventually happens, though, over time is you are given a choice about how you really want to process it. And that's when you can start applying, this sort of growth mindset of, okay, I guess I gotta get up and do something else today, or whatever that next step is. And that's where people's resilience comes out. I don't think people are more innately resilient than other people. I just think people are forced to find that part of themselves, sooner or quicker, or in more obvious ways than others.
Yeah, I that's a great kind of quote there, especially because, athletes, it's the easiest way to look at this idea of failure. But even, I just saw this, oh man, who was the coach? Some NFL coach recently reached the top of the most losses in NFL history. Or
Sure.
he was like second, right? But the way he got there is because he was so successful, he was employed long enough to
Sure.
play enough games where he was going to lose that many.
Exactly.
And that was just such a fascinating idea, that in order to reach the list that on its own you would think, wow, this person's lost the most, experienced the most failure, you also have to stay in the game long enough, be good enough, etc.
Completely. I mean, I think it's important to note that a lot of the people that I quote in the book are quote unquote losers, but still are very impressive people. And I could have written books about people who never, instead of writing about Michael Dukakis, I could have written about someone who never won his, the school board election he went out for. I mean, it could, and there's a valuable lesson from that person. In this case, I did choose someone who even in losing as badly as he did in 1988, won the Democratic nomination for president, was a governor of Massachusetts 3 times. I mean, Greg Norman in the book lost the Masters, but he was still number 1 player in the world for 90 weeks. So, there's this kind of common thread of you still have to frame the success, which is even amidst, quote unquote failures, like the NFL coach who lost that many games. The NFL coach who lost a lot, all those games, still is probably, can point to greater success than guys who never even had a job in the NFL or never had so it's all a matter of how you frame success and failure.
And now, a quick word from this week's sponsor. If you're running an e-commerce business, Whiplash is your virtual warehouse. You send your products to a Whiplash facility so that when orders come in, Whiplash packs and ships them just like you would, but faster and cheaper. Leave the logistical hassle of order fulfillment to Whiplash and save money on shipping costs while doing so. Check it out. Holiday sales shouldn't be stressful. Next time, get Whiplash. Whiplash has facilities in Detroit, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and London. Listeners of Smart People Podcast, take advantage because you can get a $100 credit when signing up at getwhiplash.com/smart. That's getwhiplash.com/smart. And now back to the episode.
And one of those things of gratitude, it's something I've been working on a lot. It's, I'm a coach, and I know it's one of the things that everybody, gratitude journal and think about what you're grateful for and all that. And it took a while because, again, I'm skeptical and things sound kind of cheesy, but it's realizing that, it is the human condition to want more. And if you never look at what you have or what you've gotten, then you will only see the failures and not the successes.
Completely. The gratitude thing, which has become kind of like a self-help buzzword in the last few years, but there's such value in it. I literally woke up this morning feeling very grateful and trying to express my gratitude that I was able to write a book and that people who were happy for me. I really felt that way. And it's just a healthier way to live. It's really, you could talk about mindsets again. I could, choose to focus on all the things I don't have and all the things I want. And I think that's a vicious cycle that you go down. And so the reason why people gravitate towards this whole gratitude movement, for lack of a better word, is because there's real value in thinking that way, because you're able to highlight things that are good in your life.
I wanted to, you mentioned it already, obviously we talked about it a bit, but the Greg Norman story, it was one I wanted to highlight, and not because it was golf, although it was, and I'm familiar with it, but because it's pretty enormous, right? So he never won a Masters, but will go down in history as one of the best golfers of all time.
Right.
But not only that, he went into Sunday with, I think it was 6-shot lead or something like
Six-shot
that.
lead,
Which
yeah.
is, I mean, for the best golfer in the world, that's basically a slam dunk. It could be
course.
one of the greatest kind of sports failures. What does he say? I mean, does he recover? It's a total. I mean, that would just speak to who you are as a golfer. So does he recover? How? What's he say about it?
Yeah.
And what
Well,
does he actually believe? Like, I don't want to hear the buzz line. I want to know what you think at its core it means.
That's a great question. For starters, it is a crushing loss, and he blew it. And in some ways, he never recovered, in the sense that he never won another major. He never won the Masters again. He made a run 3 years later, 99, and had a chance, but he didn't win. So you can make the case that he didn't have this great redemptive moment where he triumphed over his demons. Where I do feel like he, quote unquote, won or succeeded was because he became more human to people. So Greg Norman's a proud guy. The time I spent talking to him, he is a proud guy, and maybe even a little arrogant. And I think in his case, when he recognized that he lost and people responded in the way that he did, which was genuine. I think he genuinely owned up to the mistakes he made that day and admitted the pain he felt and congratulated Nick Faldo, all really admirable things. That was a very endearing moment to a lot of people. And so when he saw how people responded, he probably, a part of him was like, wow, I really like this. People responded well to it. So appealing to that sort of that pride, or for a second, he recognized that, he lost in a very constructive way that shaped him as a public figure moving forward. So was it calculated? I don't think, and I'd like to think it's not calculated. I think it was genuine, but I do think that he was self-aware enough to recognize that it was a good thing for him.
What message did you ultimately take back to your boys, given that was kind of the initial goal?
Yeah.
If you could sum it up, and it doesn't have to be one sentence, but a couple minutes or whatever. What'd you learn?
Yeah, I mean, the two big things is just this idea that if you realize that losing is inevitable and that dealing with it is just a part of life, then you can start saying, okay, if I'm going to lose often, the best way to deal with it is to take some positives away from it and recognize it can make me stronger, and see that I'm going to be better because of adversity X, Y, and Z. And then from there, I think the most important thing is once you see that you're going to lose and that losing does not need to be this devastating event, then you're less afraid to try things. And so you're less afraid of sticking yourself out there. So like, this is such a small, dumb example, but it springs to mind for some reason, is my youngest son has this great attitude, and actually we're at a wedding and he dances and he loves to dance. And, he's not afraid of putting himself out there and being judged because he has that kind of mindset. My oldest son is constantly he deals more in trepidation. Like he doesn't want to be judged in that way, or doesn't want to let loose in a way. And I guess, what I'm working on with him is there's nothing wrong with putting yourself out there and allowing yourself to be judged if you realize that either way you're going to be okay. And so it's just making sure that they embrace risk and are not afraid of falling on their face, because invariably the fear of messing up is usually worse than the messing up actually is.
Yeah, or the fear of what it holds you back from accomplishing.
Exactly.
And it's something, again, the reason I was really excited about this, I mean, logically, this all makes sense, but it's so hard to do. It's so hard to put into place. And again, even for sports, I don't think that's a high enough bar, because you can lose and just go get better, and you can maybe keep losing, but especially if you're a professional, you're getting paid to do it.
Right.
It's more the things I think of, regardless of your political stance. I mean, Hillary Clinton had to be, maybe, I don't know, just despondent over the loss. What did you hear in terms of the pain that people felt? Did they admit it to you and kind of talk about, yeah, it's real, I dealt with it, and what'd you hear there?
Yeah, no, I think that was a recurring theme. Is I didn't want to hear from people who was like, "Oh yeah, it wasn't a big deal. I was okay." Like that's not a reversal, it's not an interesting story.
Right.
But second of all, I think there's a recurring theme there that the people who sort of gloss through the pain are not allowing themselves to, learn from it or grow from it. The author Brene Brown has written about this, and she calls it, gold plating grit, in the sense that people are trying to kind of skip over the hard parts to get to the redemptive part. I liken it to if you went to the gym and you worked out for 10 minutes and you walked on the treadmill and had a drink of water 3 times, and then congratulated yourself on the killer workout, you wouldn't get any results because you didn't go through the pain or the difficult part of working out. And so the real growth opportunities comes from experiencing that pain and feeling it and hopefully learning from it. So I think everyone, whether it was Greg Norman, kind of walking like a zombie through the back nine at the Masters, or Michael Dukakis, still feeling like the loss in '88 stings him. Everyone had these sort of dark moments, and the point of the book is not to say, if you read this book and you embrace losing, you're going to avoid all your dark moments. It's not the point. The point is that it hopefully provides you a path to eventually emerge from those dark moments.
Mm. One question I have for you, and again, it's because of the topic, so feel free to answer it, with what you've learned or just what others have said or how you feel. This idea, you hear it all the time after failures. People say, oh, it's meant to be, or what will come out of it will be better than, what it was or who you were. Or kind of my favorite is people who look back and say, wow, that actually worked out for the best, right? And that feels good. But if I go back to, again, my logic perhaps broken, sometimes I'll say, how do I know it worked out for the best? Because if that would have happened, perhaps it was so much better. And so I think about Dukakis, for example. He might be wherever he is in the world and saying, wow, my life's great. It worked out for the best. But did it? I mean, what if he was president? And what if he changed the world? And what if he, what do you say to that?
Well, even he acknowledges that, like, he's not happy he lost. Like, and he's the guy who says, he has a line that says, if I had beaten the old man, you never would have heard of the kid. Meaning, like, if I had won, then you never would have dealt with George W. Bush. And if you're on that side of the political spectrum, it was a great loss on a number of levels. There's a part of the book in which I talk about counterfactual thinking, and that's what you're talking about. You're thinking about the kind of what could have been. And that's pretty dangerous. And I guess the point I would make is you should avoid it. So the example that's great is Olympic athletes who there's like been a scientific study of that bronze medalists end up being happier than silver medalists. So stay with me for a second. I'll explain why. The reason is that bronze medalists, they think about the fact that they almost didn't win a medal at all, and they're so pumped that they won a medal. A silver medalist thinks about the fact that he could have won gold, or she could have won gold and didn't, and so they're constantly irritated by that reality. And so my point is that you should not engage in those negative thoughts, because it ultimately doesn't get you anywhere. Thinking about what could have been is can be really crippling. You can, and if you do choose to think about what could have been, I think you're better having the positive slant, because it might be a little bit of sort of mental gymnastics, but ultimately it's just a healthier way to live, because it's the same way of thinking, okay, I don't have this house, but at least I have a house. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just, again, it goes back to that gratitude. Like, better to be thankful for the things that worked out in some way well than focusing on all the things that went against you.
Yeah, it does go back to that idea of mindset. And it's this, look, what happened. You can choose to experience it now in whatever way you want. And if you want to beat yourself up, then go ahead and be a masochist. You know what I mean? Yeah. Well, Sam, I know our time is dwindling. The book, again, Win at Losing, How Our Biggest Setbacks Can Lead to Our Greatest Gains, came out today, covers these stories that we've talked about, plus many more. Is there anywhere else that you would like to direct people who have heard this? Obviously, pick up the book. We'll link to it on smartpeoplepodcast.com, but anywhere else?
samweinman.com that has more information on the book and has some, some coverage of the book and people's response to it. And there's a video of me talking very eloquently about losing. I'm being sarcastic, but so my website is samweinman.com, and there's a lot of information about the book there.
Fantastic. Well, Sam, I really appreciated this. I want to give you your 15 minutes in between interviews because I know it's a crazy day.
Great. I enjoyed the discussion. It was fun.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Be well.
All right. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Sam Weinman. Sam's book, Win at Losing: How Our Biggest Setbacks Can Lead to Our Greatest Gains, can be found at your local bookstore and, as always, on Amazon. And if you do purchase through Amazon, please do not forget to use our Smart People Podcast Amazon link located at smartpeoplepodcast.com/Amazon. Any purchase you make while going through the link comes to no cost to you and gives us a nice little kickback, and it helps support the show. Well, I hope you are having a fantastic start to 2017. It's always so weird when the year changes and, you're writing things, checks, whatever it is, always putting that 2016 still. I wonder when I'll actually stop. Oh well. That's besides the point, but if you want to reach out to the show, you can get in touch with us at smartpeoplepodcast@gmail.com or message us on Twitter at smartpeoplepod. If you're still thinking of 2017 New Year's resolutions, I have one for you. It's the resolution to leave more reviews. And if you want to get started, you can leave a review for Smart People Podcast over on iTunes. It's super helpful to the show, and we greatly appreciate each and every one of you for taking 3 to 5 minutes out of your day to do so. All right, that's it for me this episode. Please make sure you head over to smartpeoplepodcast.com to see all things Smart People Podcast related and to sign up for our fantastic newsletter. It's easy to do so. We won't spam you, I promise. Make sure you stay tuned. We've got great guests coming up, and we will see you all next episode. If you're running an e-commerce business, Whiplash is your virtual warehouse. You send your products to a Whiplash facility so that when orders come in, Whiplash packs and ships them just like you would, but faster and cheaper. Leave the logistical hassle of order fulfillment to Whiplash and save money on shipping costs while doing so. Holiday sales shouldn't be stressful. Next time, get Whiplash. Whiplash has facilities in Detroit, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and London. And listeners of Smart People Podcast get a $100 credit when signing up at getwhiplash.com/smart. That's getwhiplash.com/smart.